Welcome back. Good Monday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Happy Monday to you. It is Monday, May 7th. Your top stories right now, 8 a.m. on the East Coast. Markets are poised for gains this morning. Futures indicating a higher opening for the broader averages. Dow Industrial set to open up about 75 points. That's 1/3%. Extending the rally on Friday. It was a volatile session on Friday after the April jobs report. We will show you later this hour how you could have made money if you watched this program Friday morning. Market was up 332 points at the close, 1.33%. The NASDAQ was up 1.75%, 122 points higher on Friday. Global markets this morning are fractionally better, but no big moves. We got the DAX index in Germany, the best performer, up 0.2% with 75 points higher. The CAC 40 in Paris is flat, and markets in London are closed for a holiday. In Asia overnight, markets were mostly higher at the close, with the exception of Japan. Korea's closed for a holiday, and the Shanghai Composite in China was up 1.5%. Oil prices on the move this morning. Crude oil hitting the highest level since 2014 amid protests in Iran, along with the looming deadline over the nuclear deal May 12th. Former Senator Joe Lieberman joined me Sunday, reiterating the president's call to pull out of the deal. He explained why it's the right move.
It basically gave away all our leverage against them in return for a pause in their nuclear program, if they're keeping their word, which they don't have a good reputation for doing. So it was a bad deal, a mistake for us.
We're taking a closer look coming up this morning. Meanwhile, Nestle's coffee business getting extra buzz from Starbucks. The company's made a deal for Nestle to sell Starbucks bagged coffee and other drinks in grocery stores for more than $7 billion. And a warning for Attorney General Jeff Sessions. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes is threatening to hold him in contempt of Congress. The Justice Department fired back against Nunes' allegations. We're going to break it all down coming up. Lava has overtaken neighborhoods on Hawaii's Big Island. The fiery lava flow damaged dozens of homes and forced more evacuations. Plus, the ultimate real estate listing goes beyond a windowed kitchen and stainless steel appliances. One New York City apartment offering a Rolls-Royce and a trip to space, along with the apartment. It comes with a hefty price tag. All those stories coming up this Monday morning. And joining me to break it all down, Fox News contributor Katherine Timpf, the King's College professor of business and economics Brenberg, and PwC partner Mitch Roschelle. Great to see you.
SpaceX and a Rolls-Royce.
Yeah,
I'd like that.
I'd go for
Plus
the apartment.
Yeah, the apartment looks
Throw
pretty
the apartment in there with it.
A little nicer than mine. Just a little bit.
You think?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that coming up. Topping the news this half an hour, a looming deadline over the Iran nuclear deal. British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson is making a plea to stay in the agreement as he meets with Vice President Mike Pence today, along with National Security Advisor John Bolton. Blake Berman is at the White House right now with the very latest there. Blake, good morning to you.
Maria, good morning to you as well. It is one of the biggest decisions of the Trump presidency coming up this week. The commander-in-chief has to decide by Saturday whether to keep the U.S. and the Iran nuclear deal or pull out, which could potentially kill the deal altogether. The top Republican on the House Armed Services Committee is Mac Thornberry, and he said over the weekend that he thinks the president should actually stay in the deal.
I would counsel against it. I was opposed to the Iran deal. I thought it was a bad deal. You need to have a clear idea about next steps if we are going to pull out.
But the former Democratic Senator Joe Lieberman is of the contingency, as he told you over the weekend, Maria, that he feels an entirely new deal is needed.
It was a bad deal, a mistake for us. I think the president really has the power to correct that mistake, and I hope he does.
You mentioned Boris Johnson, Maria. He is also the top diplomat in the UK. He is also on the airwaves this morning trying to push for the U.S. to stay in this deal. European allies have been hoping that the president will stay in. As you know, Emmanuel Macron, Angela Merkel were here at the White House within the last week or two with that message in part. But the president's, potentially his biggest ally, Benjamin Netanyahu, is of the thinking that the president needs to pull out of this deal again by Saturday. So the president has 5-6 days now to announce what he wants to do. Maria?
Yeah, we'll see about that. It feels like he keeps hinting that it's actually going to be a pullout. Blake,
Yeah.
We'll see what the other allies have to say about that, including Europe. Blake Berman at the White House, thank you. Joining us right now to talk more about it is former White House press secretary under George W. Bush and Fox News contributor Ari Fleischer. Good to see you, Ari. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
So you got, the UK Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson pushing look, it's better to improve Iran's handcuffs rather than break them. They want us to stay in.
The problem with that is it assumes they have handcuffs on them, and they don't. I've never seen handcuffs that you get $1.8 billion in cash and an estimated 150 billion in exchange for handcuffs. My problem with the Iran deal is it was never stopped Iran from being on the path to getting a nuclear weapon, which is what this is about. It's never improved Iran's behavior in the neighborhood, which is what this should be about. And I am 100% in support of President Trump doing everything he can to make it an effective deal.
What are the implications of pulling out?
Well, the implications of pulling out are that Iran just immediately resumes its enrichment programs to try to get a nuclear weapon faster. But it also, you have to assume they're not doing that now anyway. And I'm not willing to make that assumption. I think there is a possibility Iran is doing that anyway, and we just don't know it. So you have to look at the motives of the people that you're dealing with in this case, and I don't think the motives of Iran should lend credibility or support in the West that Iran is a good behavior.
So what you're basically saying is there's really no way to renegotiate this in a way that's going to be effective. It has to be a pullout, and it has to be a completely different approach to Iran. I mean, some people are holding out hope that you can make it tougher or renegotiate, but it sounds like what you're saying is you just need to start.
No, I do think there is a way to ratchet down and really to create pressure, and that comes through sanctions. The sanctions that never should have been lifted in the first place. Our best hope against Iran was sanctions, and it's a non-military way to settle a dispute. And if you actually have international support, then you can have meaningful sanctions. Unfortunately, the history of sanctions is too often they're violated because you don't have support.
But they were lifted because of the Iran deal.
That's correct.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mitch.
What happens with our relationship with the rest of the world if we do pull out sort of unilaterally and everybody is against it?
Well, I'm not sure everybody's against it. I think when it comes to economic matters,
but they're looking for us to lead.
People follow the leader.
Right.
And that's how the United States presidents are effective. If you demonstrate leadership, if you show this is the right thing to do from a moral perspective, from a national security and economic perspective, you can rally support.
By the way, they all followed us in.
That's my point.
Yeah, because, you know, the only reason everybody's involved in this deal is because the U.S. said, yes, let's do it.
Exactly right. And now it looks like France, Germany, even though they would like us to stay in, they're willing to follow us into something more effective and tougher. That's, again, American leadership. American leadership still speaks volumes around the world.
Some people say that they're concerned that if we pulled out, it could affect negotiations with North Korea because they might think that, oh, the next president can just exit whatever deal we make. Do you think that there's any validity to that or no?
I think it's just the opposite. I think once America shows, just as we did with the Soviet Union, that we mean business, that sends a signal around the world, and that actually helps us with North Korea.
Well, this is a good point, because North Korea and Iran are partners in certain business. And I say that loosely because it's about making nuclear weapons. But so North Korea is going to be watching this closely.
That's right. And they're watching it closely for toughness.
Right, exactly.
They're not watching
That's what
it closely
I mean. So I agree with you. It's the
for
opposite.
precedents. They're looking for, does this guy, Donald Trump, really mean business?
Does the tough
Because
talk,
America doesn't under President Obama. That's why they were able to get away with these things. And everybody knew it abroad. Now, Trump's different.
So White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders has been in her role nearly a year. From attacks by the mainstream media to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, she has been tough under a lot of scrutiny. Ari, you stood at that podium. That was your job. How's she doing?
It's an easy job.
Yeah, right.
I think Sarah's doing just fine. It is a very tough job, and I think anytime your boss gives you incomplete information, which is how I'm going to phrase it, it makes the job of press secretary impossible, because the press will never accept incomplete. They won't nail in on the vulnerability, and that's what happened to Sarah. It's not her fault.
But this whole White House correspondent takedown, I mean, that had nothing to do. That was just mean.
That was brutal. It was unfair. That's a dinner that should be over. I am so pleased to tell you I haven't been to that dinner since I was the press secretary.
Really?
It's just...
You don't want to... You think they should shut it down?
Absolutely. This should be a press dinner. Let reporters have a dinner for themselves, to honor journalism, to have scholarships. Why are they trying to get all these government officials to go?
Because they want to roast them.
They want glamour. They want red carpets and glamour and to celebrate themselves, which is not what journalism is about.
Look, let's turn to the House Intelligence Committee and what's going on between the DOJ and Devin Nunes. He issued a threat to Attorney General Jeff Sessions yesterday, outlining consequences if Sessions does not comply with a subpoena investigating alleged surveillance abuses at the Justice Department. Here's what the congressman said on Fox and Friends yesterday.
2 weeks ago, we sent a letter to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, a classified letter. Per usual, it was ignored, not acknowledged, just completely ignored. So last week we sent a subpoena, and then on Thursday we discovered that they are not going to comply with our subpoena. The only thing left that we can do is we have to move quickly to hold the Attorney General of the United States in contempt.
Now, the Department of Justice fought back, saying that it did respond to Congressman Nunes with a letter last Thursday, and that letter reads this, in part. The department has determined that, consistent with applicable law and longstanding executive branch policy, it is not in a position to provide information responsive to your request regarding a specific individual. So, yeah, I mean, everything that Devin Nunes said was right, that they responded on Thursday, but on Thursday they say we're not going to comply.
Yeah, you know, this is so tricky because on the one hand, you really do have a Justice Department responsibility to make sure our prosecutions are able to go through without being unduly influenced. On the other hand, Justice Department's responsible to Congress, so I hope this gets settled in a negotiation. But what Congress is saying basically is they've run out of patience and they don't have any tools to comply. But good behavior from an executive branch, so they have very blunt tools, and that's what they have to use.
Yeah.
Every time Congress asks for something from DOJ, just to your point, that when the news finally comes, when something's finally provided, it turns out to be bad news for the DOJ. It looks like this repeatedly. We just don't want to give you anything because we don't have anything with us that's going to make us look good. We're going to look bad in this.
Well, right, like one redaction was about Lisa Page saying to Peter Strzok, oh, go to the party and, you know, go talk to Judge Contreras. It's not a conflict of interest. Judge Contreras was the FISA judge. Right. And that was redacted.
Yeah, the redactions are becoming...
That's not national security.
No,
right, yeah.
They're protect images and
nothing to do with keeping us safe.
And that's a bureaucracy-wide problem. And what's surprising, though, is that people at the top, the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, are listening to the bureaucrats underneath them instead of being outsiders and forcing good behavior in their agencies.
Well, that's really an important point, and I want to drill down on that a bit. I don't understand. This is Donald Trump's Department of Justice, we thought. And they're fighting with the Congress who's overseeing them. They don't want to show... What are they hiding?
It tells you the power of bureaucracy. That's where the redactions are done. The Attorney General doesn't sit there with a black marker. It's people underneath.
But shouldn't Rosenstein or Sessions say, look, unredact and send them the darn documents?
But this is what it takes. And for them to put in the time, the effort, the energy to fight the bureaucracy really requires outsiders thinking. Bureaucracies have tremendous sway and power because of exactly these type of issues. You have to have the people at top decide, I'm going to take them on. And it's not just this issue. You have to take them on a host of issues, so they pick and choose.
Meanwhile, somebody is trying to take on Robert Mueller right now. The judge on Friday, the very latest in terms of the special counsel, Robert Mueller, a former personal attorney for President Trump, says that the president will not sit down for an interview with Mueller, saying this is no longer a, quote, good faith investigation. The president tweeted about this about 30 minutes ago. He says this: the Russia witch hunt is rapidly losing credibility. House Intelligence Committee found no collusion, no coordination or anything else with Russia. So now the probe says, OK, what else is there? How about obstruction for a made up phony crime? There is no obstruction. It's called fighting back. Ari, this started because on Friday, one judge, federal judge, T.S. Ellis, basically said to Robert Mueller, no, we're not going to proceed in this Paul Manafort prosecution because it has nothing to do with the Russia mandate that you were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's what he said. Terribly significant. We'll have to see how he rules. There could be a difference. But no way should Donald Trump sit down. I mean, I just can't imagine. I think this is all kabuki dance now. He's not going to sit down, and I think everybody knows that. Look, I think I'm the only person left on Fox News who will say this, though. Let Mueller finish the investigation.
You're right.
The worst thing that could happen is Donald Trump fires him, he gets rid of him in some manner. Then all the good news that's been happening to the president, his improving poll numbers, it's all going to reverse. What he needs to hold out for is Mueller to vindicate him. If he's vindicated by Mueller, it's going to be sky high for Donald Trump. It's going to be like a new election day for him. Let it see its course.
Yeah, but will he be vindicated given the fact that this investigation has gone so far afield? First we were told it was collusion, then it was obstruction, now it's payments to Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, I think the president will be vindicated. Now, the people in his satellite, his orbit, as he said, we don't know. But for the president, yeah, absolutely. I don't see anything out there. Unless Mueller has a surprise up his sleeve, but none of us know that. Right. So the right course, let Mueller finish. And when Mueller says there's no collusion, he is so home free. His poll numbers are going to start to move up sharply, and that's the best thing for the president.
So you think you do see an end to the investigation?
Oh, of course I do. I don't know what time, when, but these things always do end.
I don't even remember life before this investigation.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. All right, thank you. All right, Fleischer there. Coming up, Nestle brewing up something new, strikes a deal with Starbucks. The Swiss company's plan to sell the coffee chain's products across the world. And then everything and the kitchen sink, the incredible amenities of this $85 million apartment that's up for sale. Next. Welcome back. A Florida deputy is fighting for his life this morning after being shot in the head. Cheryl Casone with the story. Cheryl.
That's right, Maria. Deputy William Gentry was responding to a call about a cat being shot when the gunman fired in Lake Placid, Florida. The suspect, identified as Joseph Abels, has been arrested. The Highlands County Sheriff Department says that he has a violent history with law enforcement. Deputy Gentry is a 9-year veteran of the force and serves with his brother, who is a detective. Well, an escalating disaster in Hawaii. 26 homes are now destroyed as lava flows intensify from the Big Island's Kilauea volcano. More than 1,700 people have now been evacuated. And there's this stunning new video that shows molten rock spewing into the air. That hot lava also giving off poisonous gas. The volcano producing more than 1,000 earthquakes over the last week. Well, scientists don't know when the lava is going to stop or how far it will spread, but when the sun comes up in Hawaii, we'll hopefully get a better picture of what's going on there. Nestle and Starbucks are teaming up. Nestle paying Starbucks more than $7 billion to sell Starbucks in homes. The business has $2 billion in sales and reinforces Nestle's position as the world's biggest coffee company. The deal doesn't include products inside of Starbucks coffee shops. About 500 Starbucks employees are going to join Nestle. Operations are going to be located for this joint venture in Seattle. Starbucks, the stock, as you can imagine, is up higher in the pre-market, up almost 3%. Shares of Nestle are down about 11% year to date. And check this out. The most expensive apartment listing in New York City right now has got some very unusual perks to try and get somebody to buy it. If you become the new owner of this for sale $85 million duplex penthouse on the west side of Manhattan, you will also get 2 Rolls-Royce Phantoms, a Lamborghini Roadster, among some other high-end benefits. If you're really willing to get away from it all, though, how about this? 2 $250,000 tickets to fly to outer space on Virgin Galactic also being thrown in. The owner of the penthouse says it's a chance for somebody who's not from the city to live a luxurious New York lifestyle, because that's how we all live in New York. Gotcha.
There's something. Those pictures of the apartment are gorgeous. And then you've got the trip to space and the Rolls Royce.
You know what I didn't see was a parking garage for the cars. If you don't get a parking spot, who cares if you've got it? I mean, there's nowhere to put it.
You know, I'll gladly take one of those cars and let them park in my garage in the burbs.
There you go. There's your offer. Add it to the deal
Can't
here.
park on the street in the Rolls. No. Thank you, Cheryl. Coming up, hundreds of cities applied to become the second headquarters for Amazon. But what happened to the towns that got rejected? The changes that are taking place in those areas after the retail giant pointed out what it did not like. That's next. And then in roughly 10 minutes, I'll be speaking exclusively with the CEO of Oracle, Mark Hurd, my special guest. We'll get his take on cybersecurity, cloud software, and a lot more. Back in a moment, right here. Welcome back. Amazon hitting the phone lines. The list for Amazon's new $5 billion second headquarters has been chopped down from 238 to now 20. But it's what some of the cities did not have to offer that prompted more than 200 phone calls from Amazon to disappointed municipalities in recent weeks. Joining us now is the cyber guy, Knutsson. Kurt, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria.
So what were some of the big issues that Amazon had with the cities that were ultimately rejected?
All right, so here's what's at stake. As you know, $5 billion into the local economy, 50,000 jobs, and Detroit, as well as Pittsburgh or Orlando, failing for not simply having a decent enough public transit system. The other thing on their list that they really wanted that a lot of cities didn't have was a pool of tech workers to pull from. For 50,000 jobs coming in there, they really wanted to have some talent there. That's narrowing the field here, and the heat is getting turned up. A lot of cities here now really vying to have this headquarters, a second headquarters in their city. And you know, this is that tax breaks are really what Amazon is looking for.
Right. I mean, it's interesting, Mitch, you know so much about real estate and have been watching the real estate markets develop across the country over the last year. But some of these cities that were actually rejected are now going back and saying, well, Amazon didn't like this and Amazon didn't like that, so let's put that in our city now.
Yeah, which could be a mistake. If the pool of talent of tech workers is really a driving force, there's only going to be a handful of cities that are going to have that hit that box. I think it's an array of things, and I'm not a big fan of Amazon going back and saying, hey, city, you didn't pass because of X. But think of it from the city's perspective. When you fail a test, you want to go to the faculty member, right, Brian, and find out why you didn't pass. So it kind of makes sense, but this whittling down his list, if tech skills are really the driving force. I had heard, we talked about before, that SAT scores was also part of the calculus. So
SAT
scores. Well, they're trying to figure out how intelligent. You had heard that too, Kurt?
No, I actually had not heard that. I know there's additional criteria that they're not telling us, but that I did not see on the list. It really boiled down to, are you going to give me a tax break, I think is at the top of the list.
I'm sure that's
and then
the
is
top of
there
the
the
list,
infrastructure to support this?
So, well, money's mobile.
So, Kurt, you get these cities getting this feedback, and some of them are sort of jumping over hoops to try to fix what's wrong. Are there any cities who are just saying to Amazon, like, look, take a hike. Don't tell us what to do. We gave you what we got, and if you don't like it, fine. But don't try to dictate how we run the city.
There are, because there's some sophisticated players at cities, Brian, and those are the people that realize that it's about the tax break, quite frankly. And they're like, hey, this is what we have. This is what we have on the platter. Take it or leave it. You've got that going on. And then you have other cities like the Newark area outside of New York and New Jersey. They are really offering substantial tax breaks. And if you take a look at the existing tax structure across the now candidates, there are about 20 of them. Raleigh is leading that one. They have the lowest tax at 7%. And though the rumor here now for this $5 billion coming in to some city that's going to be awarded for the second headquarters is leaning toward the Washington, D.C. area and Northern Virginia.
We've been predicting that on this show. We have been predicting that it's going to be Washington.
That's the smartest move.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
Smartest
didn't Jeff
move.
Bezos
They're
just
3
buy
miles
an
away
enormous...
from their giant.
Didn't Jeff Bezos just buy an enormous house in Washington?
Well, that would make sense, but he's buying
so.
big houses like just down the road here in Beverly Hills. So I don't know if they're going to move the headquarters to Beverly Hills.
That's
a sign.
I guess, if you're that rich.
But I'll tell you what he did do is he bought a bigger house for their data there. So that's part of this country that is really the American hub of data. A lot of people don't know that is in the Washington, D.C. area. So in this area of D.C., just outside of Dulles Airport, in Northern Virginia, actually, that is where they've already spent a huge amount of money on another data center, and they bought another parcel of land that's about 26 acres. So people are eyeballing that.
All right, we'll watch. Kurt, thank you. Good to see you, sir.
All right, good to see you,
Kurt Knutsson there. Coming up, I'll talk exclusively with the CEO of Oracle, Mark Hurd, getting his take on the tightening labor market, the company's cloud business, and a lot more. Then, after Tesla CEO Elon Musk ignored recent questions about his company's spending, the automaker is now revealing it may, in fact, look to raise additional capital. Just what a lot of the skeptics were saying. Back in a moment.
When the sun goes down, we'll be grooving when the sun goes down. We'll be feeling all right when the sun sinks down over the water. Everything gets hotter when the sun goes down.
Welcome back. Good Monday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Monday, May 7th. Your top stories right now, 8:30 a.m. on the East Coast. Markets are poised for gains today. Futures indicating a higher opening with about an hour until the market opens. The trading day at 9:30, up 60 points on the Dow, up 30 points on the NASDAQ. Global markets are fractionally better on the session. Really fractional moves here. The CAC 40 is flat on the session, but the DAX index is up 0.75% with a 90-point rally. Markets in London were closed this morning for a holiday. In Asia overnight, markets mostly higher. Korea was closed for a holiday as well, but the Shanghai Composite, best performer in China, up 1.5%. The state of the labor market. The April jobs report missed expectations on payrolls, but one question looming large is whether the labor market is tightening. The administration does not think so, but we will hear from the CEO of Oracle about finding skilled workers coming up. Then Greece approaching the 8-year anniversary of its first bailout. We'll take a look at where the economy stands now and where the risks are. Tesla backtracks. The company now revealing it may raise money just days after CEO Elon Musk ignored questions about Tesla's spending, calling them boring. Earnings season winding down, but Disney is on tap. We'll have a preview of tomorrow's earnings from Disney. Stock is up 1% going into the numbers. First, though, this kicking off the half hour with a look at Oracle, the technology giant reporting a 5.4% increase in revenue year over year in its latest earnings report. This is coming as Oracle is announcing new support services for its cloud applications today. Joining me right now in a Fox Business exclusive is Oracle CEO Mark Hurd. Mark, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Maria.
And I know you've got Global Media Day going on this morning at your headquarters. Tell us where the growth at Oracle is right now and what some of the messages in terms of growth are that you're trying to get out this morning to the media.
I think in general we'll talk about two different things that Oracle is really focused on right now, amongst many things that we do, but really two key areas. One, our applications business, which you referenced a little bit with the support services, those mainly being our new SaaS applications, whether those be ERP, HR, sales, marketing, service. And so we'll talk about all the innovation and the integration of artificial intelligence capabilities into those applications. And then in addition to that, we'll talk about a new database that we're releasing called the Autonomous Database that similarly has AI functionality integrated into that as well, which is probably the biggest database product we've ever, biggest in the context of the features and the innovation that we've released in years and years and years, perhaps even ever.
Well, look, obviously the cloud business has taken off and is really one of the big growth spots of the economy right now. Give us your sense of what business managers are doing. Do you see them increasing budgets as it relates to cloud computing and other things, and where are those other things? Are they putting new money into these kinds of things?
Yeah, I think it is new money, but it is really a shift of the existing monies. If you look at business budgets for IT, they're not up a lot. Depending on whose research you believe or really follow, it could be down a little bit to up a little bit. But within that budget, the shifting of the traditional spending on older on-premise capabilities and moving that into cloud is what's going on. And it's going on for a couple of core reasons. One, frankly, Maria, from a total cost of ownership, it just costs less money. Second, you just get a lot more innovation while you spend less money. And thirdly, an issue that you and I have talked about before, security. It's simply more secure than the traditional way of running solutions in your own data center. Those three core things are business drivers as opposed to even tech drivers. Maybe the innovation piece has got some tech drivers to it. But at the end of the day, this is as much about business strategy, business models, as it is about the raw technology itself.
I mean, I assume when it comes to cyber, that's sort of an unlimited spend. You've got to protect your customer data.
Yeah, it's even more than customer data. You've got customer data, you've got supply chain data, you've got financial data, you've just got really the whole data set in most companies is extremely valuable. And it's, by the way, to be clear, and I know you have a lot of people that come on your show talking about why companies don't do more. First of all, to start with, it's really hard to secure all of this stuff because the industry has spent 20 to 25 years building up these very complicated architectures of a server from one company, an operating system from another, a database from another, all sorts of middleware and different applications. And all of this stuff, Maria, has to be glued together. And then there's this complicated world called patching. And to patch something, you have to know the versions of each of these individual pieces. And you have to do it simultaneously. And without me going into excruciating detail, it's just a hard thing. And so part of this move to the cloud is trying to get rid of that complexity and trying to move that to a much simpler world, a much easier world. And everything in the cloud is at least, let me talk about our cloud. Our cloud is just architected with one architecture, one server, one operating system, one database. So the job just becomes infinitely easier.
So the sales force is able to execute that, given the fact that you've got so much competition in this field. I mean, everybody is now recognizing that cloud is where you want to be, and you've got lots of companies, big and small, trying to get that market share. What is your sales force doing in terms of keeping the market share?
Well, it starts with products, really. I mean, in the end, great sales forces typically are made by great products. And in the end, I think competition really changes as you're seeing today, and even as you dial forward several years. I think the plethora of companies that offered products are gonna shift into a smaller set of companies that offer a more complete set of services. So I think when you look at the competitive set, there'll actually be fewer companies in the business for a few reasons. One, you have to have great IP to be able to compete. Point two, you have to have a lot of capital. So when you start looking at the ability to deploy the IP with all of the, you talked about security. In fact, last time we talked a little bit about privacy and data sovereignty in many countries around the world, the new privacy laws. That's forcing cloud companies to have to put data center capabilities in virtually, well, almost certainly every significant country around the world. That requires not just great IP, but lots of capital. So the the number of companies that can frankly do that are actually are few.
Mark, take us around the world and give us your sense of where the economy is right now. You know, there is a narrative going around right now that while we are expecting good growth in the U.S. this year, 2.6, 2.7%, it's going to drop all the way down to 1.75% in 2019. So what are you expecting from the U.S. as well as some of the other growth markets across the world that you're in?
Well, if you want me to go relatively quickly, I'd say U.S. pretty strong. I think in the U.S. Mid-market, for example, the outside the Fortune 500, people are investing in projects they think make sense. I think big companies are investing as well. I think if you have good projects today, if you went back four or 5 years ago, I had to have a 12-month horizon in terms of a payback. Now you see that lengthening a bit. So I think the U.S. economy is good. I think when you go to Europe, it's more of a mixed bag, and it depends a little bit what sector you're in. The banking sector in Europe has some challenges in it, and of course that's one of the biggest sectors in Europe. So Europe a bit mixed. Latin America, of course, had been very strong. Brazil is, as bad as it was, I believe, is beginning to recover a bit. And Asia, okay. I think Asia's been the same. I wouldn't say exciting, but the same over the past the couple of years. So I think the economy is okay. It's hard to generalize, Maria, based on countries and industries, because it's a little bit different in each. But if I had to generalize, that's how I do it.
Mark, let me ask you about the jobs picture right now. We had the April jobs report out on Friday. It showed a weaker than expected number of jobs added to the economy. But, this market seems tight. A number of people are noticing labor shortages. Do you feel that the market right now is getting tight in terms of you finding the people that you need to put into the jobs that are available?
Well, as opposed to giving you a quick answer, I think, which I know you'd like, I think the answer is you can find people. In terms of quantity of people, we can certainly find people. It's very competitive for the great people in the market. And certainly it isn't just, Maria, about finding the quality of people and finding people that you think will be good, but in our case, the people we think will be great at Oracle. And so a lot of our effort, frankly, even in our applications, our HR applications, our human resource applications, recruiting is such an important part of it that when we recruit, we use all the intelligence we have, use the data, use machine-to-machine learning to best understand, if the company was interviewing both you and I, we might have different raw skills, but who would be the better fit for us and what we've got to do? And so that's what we're really focused on. But you can get quantity. The quality, it's very competitive for the best people.
Right, because these are very high-paying jobs. And that's what I keep hearing from businesses. I asked Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin about this, but listen to what he said.
What do you say to managers when they say, and I'm sure you've heard it, I've heard it a lot, I can't find the people to put in the jobs that I have available? Is that about training?
I think some of it is training, but I'm not hearing that from the companies I speak to.
He says he's not hearing it from the companies he's speaking to, and yet, the Journal wrote about it last week that the labor market is tightening, forcing wages up, even if it's not to the extent that we thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, again, my view of the labor market falls into a couple of categories: engineers and really salespeople, which are the two primary functions in our company. We, generally speaking, make stuff and we sell stuff. We also support stuff, and we have a lot of other functions at the company, but those are the two big core building blocks. Engineers have always been tight, Maria. This is not a new story. We have not produced enough engineers in the United States to fill all of the engineering jobs in the United States, and that's been going on a while.
So that's
been exacerbated by the It's more than training. It's just number of people available in the market. There's another problem in engineering, which has been that many people that study in U.S. engineering schools, we'd like to keep in the country, but because they come from outside the country, sometimes they're not allowed to stay. And so we could get into a longer conversation about all of these immigration issues. But the ability to keep talent, somebody goes to one of our great schools, we let them study here, but we don't let them stay here to practice. That's also hurt the ability for us to fill engineering roles in the country. So, and then for another set, there's competitive amongst those that are left. So this is not a new story about more engineers, more engineering skills available to companies. On the sales side, we find great kids on the college campus, Maria.
Really?
I mean, the quality of young people available today on the college campus. We hire from the college campus. We train our own, and we find fantastic talent. Give you an example: 6% of all the young people in college that we offer a job to accept it.
Yeah.
So we do a very, we think, great job screening and hiring and training.
Those are higher paying jobs, right? Engineering.
Engineering and sales are both great, entry levels jobs. But yes, engineering these are high paying jobs.
Mark, real quick on regulation. Do you think we're going to see tighter regulation out of this government on technology?
Out of the United States government on technology?
Yeah, given the issues around privacy and what we just saw take place around Facebook, wondering if you are expecting, a new era when it comes to the regulatory environment on tech.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'd like to see the companies regulate themselves. I mean, I'll give you an example. Just in our cloud, all of the data, customer data, is actually encrypted. So just to be, so you'd understand what that means is that even the people at Oracle,
right,
if you had your data in our cloud, you wouldn't even be able to see it.
So the regulating yourselves is critical there. Mark, great to have you on the program. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.
Good luck with the media day. Mark Hurd. We'll be right back. Welcome back to first quarter earnings season winding down fast. Only one Dow component set to report this week, along with 41 S&P 500 companies. Nicole Petallides on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, expecting a pretty good open at the start of trading. Nick, good morning.
Good morning to you. As we noted, Friday you had a great day, even though we've had 2 down weeks for the Dow and the S&P. But this morning you see futures are higher, right? We're up 67 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average futures, and we'll watch for Disney, the Dow component. And so when we look at Disney, and they're going to be reporting, there's a few things. First of all, Avengers Infinity War scored second biggest ever weekend, so that was some great news, coupled with what everybody's looking for, rising revenue, and also Black Panther helping them along, and then revenue growth from the theme parks as well as the resorts. And any news on the Disney-Fox deal. And then how about Tesla? Taking a look at Tesla this morning, as they're giving no time frame on this one. You can see the stock's up about 1%, and Musk and his team saying that we continually reevaluate the capital expenditures and may need to raise capital. I don't think that people would find that as much of a surprise, but he certainly dodged some of those questions on the conference call. The stock is about less than $100 off its annual high. Certainly has not been stellar, but you can see this morning it's up about 1%. Maria.
All right, Nick, thanks so much. Coming up, we'll sit down with the former finance minister of Greece, get his take on where that country's economy stands now as Greece approaches the 8-year anniversary of the first bailout. Back in a moment.
Always running for the thrill of it, always pushing up the hill, searching for the thrill of it. All alone, we are calling out now together, never looking down, I'm just a...
Welcome back. Greek banks getting a checkup. The European Central Bank releasing results of the latest bank stress tests, giving Greek banks a clear bill of health. It also found Greece's 4 largest banks would lose 15.5 billion euros worth of capital in the next 2 years under unfavorable economic circumstances. Joining me right now is economist, former finance minister of Greece, and the author of Talking to My Daughter About the Economy, A Brief History of Capitalism, Yanis Varaoufakis. Great to see you, Yanis. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk first about the state of Greece today. We all remember when we were in the throes of the recession, and Greece was really one of the weakest links in Europe. How do you characterize things today?
Well, you don't have to worry about Greece. Greeks have to worry about Greece. The reason why I'm saying that is because all the toxic, unsustainable debt has already been shifted onto the shoulders of the European Union taxpayers.
Wow.
So, you know, the banking system here in Switzerland doesn't have to worry about Greece. But Greece is in the clasps of a spectacular and very sad Great Depression. I heard you talk about the stress tests of our banks. Let me remind you, and this is quite telling. We had 3 recapitalizations. In other words, 3 admissions of bankruptcy of the Greek banks. Every single time, those were preceded by stress tests that gave them a clean bill of health. So please do not take too much notice of these tests. They mean absolutely nothing.
Okay.
The European Central Bank would have a serious political problem if it told the truth about the state of the Greek banks.
Wow. So it's really still in a state of weakness. It sounds dire.
Well, let me give you a U.S. parallel. Imagine that after 1929, with the collapse that you had of GDP in this country by 1932, 1933, you had lost 28% of...
Right, went into the Depression.
So imagine that after 1933, there was no statistically significant increase in GDP, and you are now in 1937, 1938, and you are still at the same level of stagnation. That's the state of Greece.
Wow. Meanwhile, we had Kyle Bass on, one of the really leading investors looking for value. He joined me last week and said he's actually investing in Greece. Listen to this.
Greece has gone through a Great Depression, a 30% real GDP decline over the last 8 years. You think about the U.S. Great Depression, we had a reflexive snap back in 2 or 3 years. They've had 8 years of a complete disaster in their economy. And you're seeing every macroeconomic indicator in Southern Europe is heading higher right now. And so
he's investing in Greece, and basically you're saying, look, just because you have 8 years of a dire situation doesn't mean it doesn't get worse.
It will not get better if we continue to do the same thing. Because now, look, we have a permanent fraudulent bankruptcy concealment. We have a bankrupt state, bankrupt banks, bankrupt families, and bankrupt companies. And we are pretending that this is going to go away through more loans and more austerity that shrinks incomes. That will not happen. But I heard the gentleman. He actually was absolutely correct in his assessment of the last period. And if you're a patient investor, it is true that asset prices are on the floor in Greece. And hopefully we Greeks will do something about it, and then assets will pick up. But it is not happening today. It is not going to happen next year or in a few years' time if the government continues to do that which the European Union is imposing upon it.
Yeah, understood. And these are very basic issues like too much debt. I mean, these are very, very basic issues. It's something that you wrote about in talking to my daughter about the economy, A Brief History of Capitalism. Tell me why you wrote this book.
Well, because we economists make effectively a very good living out of explaining things that people would normally understand in a language that no one gets. Because we understand one thing very well, monopoly power. So if we make sure that nobody understands our jargon, then our economic rent increases. So I wanted to write about economics in a way that the public would understand, it would demystify it, and the monopoly that we supposed experts have, so that then we can have a conversation about what needs to be done about the world we live in.
Will you ever go back to being in government?
Well,
Do you want to run for public office yourself?
I have just set up a new political party in Greece, so wish me luck.
And you want to run for president?
We don't have, the important position in Greece is Prime Minister. It's not something I want to do, but at the moment we are facing such a depression that it is important that those of us that have ideas about what to do should put our money where our mouth is and be prepared to serve and to offer public service.
We're going to look for your name on the Prime Minister ballot. Yanis Varaoufakis, good to see you, sir. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. My thanks to our fantastic panel this morning. Let's get right to Varney and Company. Charles Payne in for Stewart this morning. Charles, take it away.
Thank you very much, Maria. I'm Charles Payne. Stewart's off all week, but we got a lot for you, particularly this morning.